The referee's a podcast with Jack and Kelly too. Scottish championship pass, they give us the show. Footy tales from the pitch, controversies they scratch. Every moment they'll itch, no call left to bash.
Here we go again. We're back. It's the Referees a Podcast, Season 2, Episode 10. We're balls deep into this season. As always, I've got Jack Curry here alongside me. Did I do it? I'm doing the right way this time. He's over here.
Oh, you're pointing the right way this week. It's not that way.
As standard, I did start to go the other way, and then I caught myself and I flipped it back before I actually made the point. So,
Nice.
he's over here. Jack Curry, say hello.
Yes, from the depths and depths over here. No, I'm doing very, very well, Cammy boy. I hope you're having a good week, everybody listening at home and watching, obviously, as well. But yeah, no, Cam, Wednesday, back on the usual recording day.
It's true.
We had a couple of Thursday recordings there, so apologies if you were a day late in getting your podcast fixed from us. But yeah, Cam, it was another very, very intriguing week. In the championship at both ends of the table, which I'm sure we'll get on to soon. But how's your week been? And am I right in saying you'll be heading off to Hampden tomorrow night or tonight for the listeners who are watching on Thursday for the Scotland game against Greece?
Yes, of course. Yes, no, both Scotland games this week. Nice to have a double header of home games. So Thursday against Greece, Sunday against Belarus, and then away to Arbroath on the Saturday as well. What more could you want? 3 defeats in the course of 4 days.
No, you got to think positively, eh? You're not giving Scotland a chance at least on Thursday?
I'll give them a chance for sure on Sunday. Not that I'm not giving them a chance against Greece, but Greece are a good team, so I'm not going in expecting anything. I know we can do things against sort of any team, you know, just every once in a while. And we have had some absolutely cracking results. And I suppose we're in okay sort of wee patch. We started our group well and stuff. I don't know. Watching Scotland is like watching Queen's Park. You're best just going in expecting to lose, and then anything else is a benefit.
I do get what you mean. I mean, I always think with Scotland, and we're not going to get to, but I think we've got a good team. You know, when you look through it, if we can keep the players fit, which is obviously our big issue, and Kenny McLean can be kept away from the starting 11, then we've got half a chance.
I agree with that. But we did obviously go in that period where we didn't win a game for like 2 years. Now, I know you don't play that many international games over the course of 2 years, but we had a pretty severe lack of wins for a long time. And the team hasn't changed that much since then. Like you say, Kenny McLean is for the most part dropped out. And we're actually starting to play some of these good younger players that have been, you know, coming through for the last couple of years, but never made it through to the Scotland team. You know, we've got Doak, you know, starting to kick a ball for Scotland a wee bit more often, and Lewis Ferguson obviously was injured for a long time and then struggled to break in over Kenny McLean. So yeah, I'm excited to see where we're going. We just need to sort of, you know, play the way that it's a team full of really good players, and sometimes you watch them and you go, what is going on here? This is a squad of, you know, for the most part, you know, top level footballers. You know, don't get me wrong, you've got a Grant Hanley in there and a Xander Clark and, you know, things like that, and it's just like, it's a bit strange, but there's enough quality in there that you should be beating. Like, who did we lose to? Northern Ireland at home. You should probably be beating them. The times that we've struggled against Israel, and I know Israel have had good teams throughout the years and stuff like that, but you need to be beating these teams consistently if we want to be pushing back to what you ended up at one point like 12th best in the world or something like that under Walter Smith. Or Alex McLeish
like
started Walter Smith and then Alex McLeish, and we like flying up there, and you know, and now we're what, down in 43rd best in the world or something like that. You know, for the country that pioneered the football that we play today, it is a bit sad. But this is not a Scottish national football team podcast.
No,
this is the Scottish
it is not.
Championship podcast. This is where Scottish international football starts.
Yes, this is the breeding ground for national talent. And as you're right, Cam, you know, as we're segueing here from talking about world class players, you know, such as Ballon d'Or nominated Scott McTominay.
Yep.
We then need to come on to Jackson Longridge.
Sorry, 18th best player in the world, Scott McTominay.
Yeah, sorry, the 18th best player in the world, segueing into Mr. Longridge there, playing for Greenock Morton, who secured the first win. Did I say Jackson Longridge?
No, that is the Longridge that you're talking about. He's the wrong Longridge, though, out of the two.
Longridge. Who was it you had, Jason or something?
Still have Louis.
Oh yes, of course. Louis Longridge, yeah, of course. I was like Jason. But what a win for Morton, Cam. You know, a real statement win. First of the season, away to a side also down there in the league. You know, we said at the top of the podcast there was going to be big talking points at both ends. And I think Morton picking up their first win of the season probably gives them the biggest result of the weekend. What do you make of that one there, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, Morton obviously serial drawers. I suppose you wouldn't be too surprised had Morton got to the end of the season and had drawn every single game. But no, outside of all joking, every team's going to get their win at some point. Morton's managed to get the 3 points on the board away to what is apparently still a struggling Airdrie team. Obviously managing to get that goal through Ewan Henderson, who seems to have been fairly clutch for them so far this season. You know, they've obviously not been really getting the points on the board, but Ewan Henderson's has been actually scoring some goals, which after seeing him for the half season that he was at Queen's Park is astounding. But yeah, no, unlucky for Airdrie. Obviously, coming under fire initially through an own goal before equalising and then losing it fairly late on. So I think obviously when Ewan Henderson's got that equaliser, the Airdrie mob have sort of probably thought, okay, we're only down through an own goal. Now we've scored, we're in the ascendancy, we're going to crack on and go for it. And it's obviously not been the case. Morton posed too strong a barrier for them, I think.
It's interesting that it has been given us an own goal. I'll need to watch the highlights again because I thought it was Tommy Adeloy. And obviously it's been given us an own goal, but I genuinely thought watching the highlights it was Tommy Adeloy's goal. So I think my eyes have deceived me there, Cam.
We'll have to have a wee further look into this. We'll get the magnifying glasses out and we'll analyse it frame by frame. We'll get to the bottom of it.
Definitely.
Don't worry.
But when I look at Morton just now, you know, an important win, obviously getting the winner came through a set piece, you know, doing what they do best sort of thing. It was a terrible goal. I don't know if you've seen the goal that Airdrie scored, Cam, but, you know, the goalkeeper, if you can imagine the goalkeeper standing on the edge of his own box and the two centre-backs split to go wide and the full-backs are pushed up. And for some reason, he tries to find like a defensive midfielder. It must have been someone in the midfield, but there was nobody. I don't really know what he was doing. He just passed it straight to Henderson.
Brilliant.
Who just basically tapped it in.
Yeah.
You know? So it was just an absolute calamity. I'm sure any Morton fan at the game would have been thinking, having gone one up, they purposely conceded so that they could have drew 1-1 again.
Yeah.
But Longridge obviously had second thoughts. But all joking aside there, you know, I think it's a great result for Morton. We're going to get on to a theme of saying this about teams, but Morton do have a decent squad. You know, when you look at players like Moffat in there, Adeloy up front, Wilson, Blues, you know, there's a lot of solid, if not, you know, not overly spectacular, but solid, good championship level players in that team. And I think what we are seeing throughout all the draws and not many goals conceded is A, they're playing for the manager, and B, they're playing for each other. And I think that's such an important kind of trait for teams to have, and it's why Morton are and will be so difficult to beat this season.
Yes, no, I mean, Morton's always a tough opposition to play anywhere, whether it's home or away. Queen's Park know that better than most. it's never a fun one playing against them. Whether it is just the fact that they play for the badge, or they play for the manager, or whatever it is, they they always manage to dig in a little bit and sort of got that good amount of fight about them. But they've done the business here finally this season, managed to get all 3 points, and obviously that's going to do wonders for the mentality of the team. Obviously that's them sitting in 6th place there on 10 points. So no, fair play to them. They've dug it out finally. 7 draws and 1 loss on the board before that. So one of the few teams left who hadn't won a game. There's still just the one left, being Airdrie, obviously. So yeah, fair play to Morton. Airdrie still obviously big problems there, struggling, and I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, I think for Airdrie, it's almost like nothing's changed, really, is it, from the discussion that we kind of had last week? And it's still, the problems are only going to grow for them more as County pick up points. Queen's Park and Dunfermline, all the teams essentially above them picked up points.
Yeah.
And that last round of fixtures there, and they didn't. So I think that's where, if Airdrie don't get their first win, if they don't get the finger out, if they don't get a clip going at some point soon, it's going to become apparently another real big problem season for them. I mean, just to go back to Morton though, Cam, if you don't mind for a minute. I think it's so interesting here when you look at the league table, and you can frame this in 2 ways. But Morton, after 9 games, as you said, that was their first win. So 1 win out of 9 games is not a good optic.
Yeah.
But they're 2 points off the playoffs after the first round of fixtures. And then when you flip that on the other side, well, they've only lost once after 9 games.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good statistic as well. Equalled by Ayr, Thistle, and only bettered by St Johnstone.
Yeah.
So it's a real enigma, Morton. They kind of are where they are. 6th is where we all predicted them to be. So it just feels like this is just Morton all over. And that, again, as we always say, that's a compliment, Morton fans.
Yeah. No, definitely. They always manage to, even if they're not playing massively well, winning crazy amounts of games, they are obviously, always still perpetually finishing somewhere between 5th and, 8th. A push, so to be as consistent as they are, that's something in itself. So you can't take anything away from them in that regard. And like you say, just 1 defeat so far this season out of 9 games is pretty impressive. Yes, there's been a fair amount of draws, but it's they've not lost a crap ton of games. They're still putting points on the board consistently. They've managed to get 3 points now. There's no reason they can't get some more victories as the season goes on, and as long as they continue to draw rather than lose, they'll be perfectly fine.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more, Cam. And I think that's where we'll park our Morton conversation. That's enough compliments to them for 1 week. And then that takes us up to Fife, Cam. And what on paper looks like a pretty exciting 0-0, 18 shots, 7 saves by the goalkeepers. But I think you're going to tell me a completely different story.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, it was just not what you would call a classic, I don't really know. I would like to sort of split the goalkeeper save stat on this to, shots straight down the keeper's neck, because that makes it look like it was quite a good game. It really wasn't. It was 2 teams who didn't know how to get the ball to a player in a position to score. It was either that there was no one in the position to score waiting for the ball, or by the time there was a person in the area where someone could potentially score, the player who had the ball had held on to it for too long, and it was getting closed down, or it was just no. It was one of those games where you walk away from and you think no one deserved anything out of that game. A couple of half chances here and there, a couple of well worked moves throughout the course of the game. You can't go an entire game without there being anything usually, but I honestly couldn't even remember any of it See, thinking back on it now, I couldn't say, oh, there was this one particular bit where X done this, and it was just nothing happened for 90 minutes. They could have, I don't know, they could have just written in at the end, no point in recording stats, all garbage.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it's a nice point away from home, but when you saw their lack of potency up front, you think, right, okay, this is a game that we can win. They were looking like the Dunfermline of sort of earlier on last year, where they just had no attacking prowess, and we were obviously no better. I was looking at the stats before the podcast today, and so Queen's Park now the lowest scoring team in the championship with just 7 goals. 5 of those have been Josh Fowler, which means we only have 2 goals in the league outside of Josh Fowler, and I don't think many more if you include all competitions. So we need someone other than Josh Fowler to score a goal, essentially.
Yeah, that's pretty, to be fair, actually, isn't it? I mean, for him to have scored such a large percentage, you think that's 9 games where 2 other players have scored goals. It's not great reading. We spoke about it earlier on in the podcast, Cam. We said Josh Fowler will be the difference between a good and a bad season, but
Definitely.
That can't be the only player contributing for you, because ultimately it's probably not going to be enough in the end if you've only got one player that can score goals. If he gets an injury, if he gets a couple of suspensions or whatever, then there's just games where if nobody's scoring, then you'll physically get nothing but 0-0s or defeats. So it's a difficult one. We'll come back to Queen's Park in a second, because I'm interested to ask you, because obviously I missed the Dunfermline Thistle game a week or 2 ago, but Dunfermline now have had 4 pretty not great results on the spin. A lot has been kind of made. We kind of praised Dunfermline a few weeks ago. Looked like they turned a corner. Yeah. They obviously have just went off a cliff since then. What do you make of Dunfermline? Like, have you got anything redeeming you can say about them, or is it all just pretty negative?
Not at the moment. I didn't see anything on Saturday that would make me think, yeah, they're a good team, or they're going to be fine this season. Like I said, they did look as if they were sort of still the Dunfermline of last year. They didn't really seem that they'd turned much of a corner. The one thing I will say, whether it was beneficial to them or not, Zach Rudden was injured and therefore played no part in the tie on Saturday. I can't help but feel that had Zach Rudden played, he would have scored a hat-trick. Just against us. I could imagine him coming to Dunfermline and not scoring a single... I know he already has scored goals. But I could imagine him not scoring a single other goal this season, except for when he's playing against Queen's Park, where he just all of a sudden becomes the best striker in the league. But we'll see. It wasn't to be for him this weekend. But yeah, we didn't, like I say, we didn't have anything to offer either. We were no better. And,
no.
It was just a bit shite.
And I suppose from me, kind of looking at this from yourself, as a Queen's Park fan, do you take that as a good point away from home, or are you looking at that as 2 points dropped?
All things considered, it's a good point away. We're not sitting up at the top end of the league. We're not... we need to take points where we'll get them. So if we can get a good away point, then fair play. It's better than nothing. Especially when we played so poorly as well. So all things considered, yeah, it's a good point. We'll take it. But we need to do something differently as the games go on. We need to try and find a way of getting other players in the team to score goals. Not just leaving it Josh Fowler. But at the same time, some of these games, Josh Fowler's crying out for, a nice cross into the box, or, he's starting to have to drop deep or pull out wide to get on the ball, and we need to. I don't know what the answer is, but the people in charge need to try and work out what it is that we need to do in order to get someone in a bit of open space near the goal, whether it's Josh Fowler or not, because we need to start scoring more goals.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely can't disagree with any of that there. You do. I think goal scoring is your biggest problem just now. There's a few teams in the league, even us there, Cam, up there in second, that have conceded more than yourself. So it's just about trying to find that wee bit of extra in the final third.
Not to mention in terms of keeping it tight at the back, obviously. And I don't know if it's obviously to you, I can't remember if we talked about it. But Murray was out of commission for this game, not even on the bench, so didn't play. So we started Matty Shields at left centre back, but he got injured during the game as well, which meant we needed to move Carlo Pignacello into right centre back alongside Charlie Fox. So if it's as makeshift a defence as that for the coming weeks, I don't know how injured they are, but that's a big problem for us because we don't have any more defenders. That's us. We're tapped out. We have. It's
interesting though.
We have 2 left backs, but one of them was playing centre back and got injured, so we're down to 1. We've got 1 centre back in Charlie Fox, and we've got 1 right back in Rocco Friel. But then Carlo Pignacello has been playing right back as well, and that's it. That's all we have outside of youth, like all fully youth players. That's us.
Down to your last 4 defenders just now. So we'll see how it goes, but at least that defence. What was it for? At least a half there, held on to a clean sheet.
Yeah,
so
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Carlo Pignacello. I think he's not super tall. He's not massive that way, but he looks like quite stocky, and you can see he's quite strong. He's happy to muscle people off the ball and throw his body into it and stuff. So I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a really good football player, and he's got range, whether he's playing centre mid, which I think so far when I've seen him has been his best position, playing really well out in right back for the last few games, and then I thought he played excellently as a makeshift centre back for a good chunk of that game. So yeah, it's not the end of the world, but we can't afford to take any more, even as much as a knock anywhere across the back line, or we're finished.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, fingers crossed for yourselves that won't happen anytime soon. From one draw for one of our teams onto another draw for my team. At home to Arbroath here, Cam, and I can't say anything other than definitely 2 points dropped.
Yeah.
And what was just such a frustrating and disappointing afternoon in the end at Firhill, and the only way I can really describe it is it felt as though it didn't need to be that way, because we actually played well in the first half. I don't want to say we played amazing,
mm-hmm.
Because I've seen us play much better than that, but we still played well in the first half. We got such an early goal by Chalmers, and that man is just absolutely on fire just now.
Yeah,
I think I said it last week, Cam, to you, but he's really up there with just outright one of the best in the league, full stop. And I didn't actually appreciate how good his goal was on Saturday, because it was a finish inside the box, curled right into the top corner. It was great. At the time, you were like, that was brilliant. But when you watch the highlight back, the passes fizzed into him so hard by Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
That I actually couldn't believe that he managed to take it first time and get that much control in it. It was an outstanding finish. And the first half went on and we were just in total control. Not creating the clear chance, the most clear chances, but creating decent chances, not taking them. And then it was just a different Thistle team came out in the second half. And that was obviously so frustrating. So Arbroath, without being disrespectful to a team that got a draw against us at Firhill, really weren't great.
Right.
If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
they put an effort, but technically their quality was pretty poor. And obviously conditions, admittedly, weren't great on Saturday.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, just some of their first touches and like running the ball out of play, and it was one of those really frustrating games where you go, Thistle, you need to beat teams like this, and
you need to take that when you can.
Ultimately, we came up well short, and I think when you heard Wilson and Alec Ray talking about it after the game, they were equally as disappointed. So it's one of those ones, though, you kind of flip it on its head. It's now 7 unbeaten in the league for Thistle since the opening day defeat against St Johnstone. We are still in second. We do still have a game in hand. St Johnstone didn't go any further ahead. Wraith didn't gain any ground behind, and we in fact stretched that lead by a point. It's just when it could have been so much better. You know, you could have won that game thinking if we win our game in hand now that St Johnstone have got points, we're a point behind them.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different outlook on it all. So don't want to get too downbeat, but ultimately you can't get away from the fact that it was a pretty disappointing draw.
Yes. No, definitely not. It's, you know, a tough one to take for you. But when you look at, you know, nine saves from the Arbroath keeper, they've only had 33% of possession, so you can tell just from that they did take a bit of a battering, but just absolutely managed to hold on. So fair play to Arbroath, like you say. Coming to Firhill, also another tough place to go for any team, and managed to come back from a goal down to hold on to the draw and take the point home with them. The one thing I'll say, and I feel like it's ended up, I feel it had been quite a big thing. Not that it's not ever been a big thing before, but sometimes when you get that goal so early in the game, for whatever reason, it just, I don't know if the players get a sense of like overconfidence with it, where the point where they like, right, okay, it's only 5 minutes in, we're already a goal up, this is going to be a canter. I don't know if it's like a mentality thing where you take the foot off the gas, or you know what it is, but you do find quite often, sometimes you score in the first few minutes of the game that it doesn't go the way that you expect it to go. So often you're disappointed in those sorts of games, and like I say, I don't really know the ins and outs of it, but you notice it so much, and it looks like that's obviously been partially what's happened there with yourselves on Saturday.
Yeah, that's a great point you make there, Cam. You know, it's one of the classic ones where you would rather score, you know, the only goal of the game in the 95th minute than you would in what Thistle did in the 5th minute. You know, so it's one of those ones where I completely agree on that point that you've just made there. One point I'm going to make on Thistle this week, and I'm sure I did bring this up almost right maybe back at the start of this season. I feel as though the only thing that's going to truly hold these Thistle players back in this group of players, and it's not something that I want to almost admit to myself, but you know, you can't lie to yourself as well, Cam, is I think the goalkeeping situation.
I knew you were about to bring up the goalkeeping situation.
It's going to be.
Oh my God.
It's going to be a problem this year. And I highlighted it at the time. You know, I'm not a fan of too young, inexperienced goalkeepers.
Yeah.
You know, I made that point about Airdrie before. Was it last season? You know, I think when they had two youths, and if it wasn't for Hamilton, they would have finished bottom. And Budanakis clearly just a Celtic thing, and he's clearly not the one. He's just, his mistakes are just not great at all.
Yeah.
But Clark, for me, he's not as bad, but he's not good.
Yeah.
You know, and when you've got two, you know, when you've got one what I would describe as average to below average goalkeeper, and one below average to fairly poor goalkeeper, and they're both young and inexperienced, it's not great.
Are you missing Mitchell now?
No, I would still take both of them over Mitchell. I would.
Mitchell's coming back.
No.
He's coming back in January. He's coming back. You're paying big money for him to come back.
No, but a lot of Thistle fans will hate me for saying this. I was always a Snedden fan. You know, like I because we've always had just good goalkeepers, not necessarily 6'5" big thingies, but just good goalkeepers that can save shots. Yeah. And that's exactly what Snedden was. He was a great shot stopper. You know, when I look at Clark and goals, he's just the goal. He was just scared of the ball. You know, it's like, go out, you know, the goalkeeper, go and take the hit off the striker. Yeah. It doesn't matter if he hits you, you'll get a foul. But it's almost like he was worried about getting hit, or worried, you know, whatever it is, and it's just rubbish. Mm-hmm. You know, he's too interested in passing that. I said this to somebody standing next to me. I've never met a goalkeeper who looks as if they're so bothered about their pass completion ratio compared to anything else in a game.
Right.
You know, that's the impression he gives off to me, is he loves going in and going, well, I can play still my passes. Look, boss, you wanted it played out short. I've done that every time. You know, and you're like, shut up. You know, just kick the ball long. We need to win the game, sort of thing. So anyway, rant over. But
that's not the Celtic way, though.
Well, we don't. Well, he has to learn for being at us. He's not at Celtic anymore.
I understand that, but you know, it's probably more down the lines of what he's used to, what he knows. Not in terms of I completed all my passes, but the playing it out from the back and playing it short to a defender.
Which I have no problem with in general. I'm just meaning like there has to be times in games where you have to throw it out quick.
Oh no,
you have to start
definitely.
counter.
Callum
You
Ferry's
can't.
always been a bit like that as well. I always feel like there's a chance for, and it's not even just Callum Ferry. It's Queen's Park in general. Fucking, basically allergic to a quick break. They see the opportunity and they start coming out in hives.
Yeah.
It's that's. I don't know. I think it's a symptom of teams not wanting to get caught out themselves. So it's like when you see you're defending a corner and everyone's in the box. You don't have someone sitting up outside of the box and somewhere near the halfway line waiting to receive a ball that comes out or whatever. It's like, we're defending a corner, right? Every single person get in the box. We need to defend this corner, and you're like, well, come on, you're not giving yourself that chance.
No, definitely.
That's what it is.
Aye, that's what it is. But anyway, as I kind of sort of tried to say, but then got sidetracked. I'm trying not to get disappointed overly about Thistle's position, because I shouldn't be. We're in a strong position. If you said to me after 8 games we'd have 5 wins and 1 defeat, I'd be absolutely buzzing. So I shouldn't let a draw against Arbroath, get me 2 down. And fingers crossed if we can get that one against Ayr and the game in hand, and not this midweek with the Nipt, then that'll be absolutely fantastic. But we already spoke about one team getting their first win of the season earlier on in the episode. It's time, like all things, like buses, they come along 2 at once. Ross County decided that they were going to turn up and know how to play some football.
Yeah,
and
so.
They got 2 fairly late goals, but a really, really solid win against what we always say, as you've clamoured on about for ages, a good Wraith Rovers team.
Yep.
What do you make of Ross County there? We can see a lot of the extra new signings like Carson, Miller Thompson, etc., Ryan Duncan, all chucked in there from the start. We can't hide this, Cam. The money's being spent, but clearly looks as if it's been spent well.
Yeah. I mean, you can't argue with that, can you? They've finally managed to get 3 points on the board. All their new signings that they've just sort of brought in are all playing, and Wraith Rovers are a good team. They've got a good squad, so. Especially based on the fact as well that every single person that's went up to Dingwall is, taking all the points away with them. Fair play, Ross County. You managed to go to your home ground and get 3 points and keep them there. So, honestly, well done. You're probably the most expensive team in this league.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, by a mile.
So, well done. Well done.
Yeah,
good
well
3
done.
points. But no, in all seriousness, fair play. They finally managed to get there. But I can't help but feel that regardless of how many games it took them to get this win, after 5 games without winning a game, they'd already had a horrible season. So there's no 2 ways around this. Where Ross County are now, you can't really see them doing much better than one of the lower playoff places, if that, 4th, 5th place, 3rd or 4th place, if they have a really good season from here on out. They're just so many points behind. I know not so much the playoff places, but I think yourself, I think Wraith Rovers, 7 points between Wraith and Ross County, 10 points between yourself and Ross County. That's quite a lot, Even if Ross County go on and win most of the rest of the games of the season, or don't lose for most of the rest of the games for the rest of the season, you've got to imagine Partick Thistle and Wraith Rovers are going to at least do similarly, to the point where it's going to be quite close. And that's only if this is a turning point for Ross County. We don't know if this was just... they lucked out and they managed to get 3 points at home. They might lose every single away game for the rest of the year. They might get their home form in check, but they're still not sorted out at the club, on the park, with the backroom staff. There's something that's not ticking quite right at Ross County at the moment. You can't help but feel that 1 victory is maybe not them there. It's maybe the first step, but I think they've still got a ways to go.
I completely agree with you. It's the first step with County, but there is a long, long, long way to go. And you've hit the nail on the head there, Cam. You've made the point I was going to make, but I'm going to explain it in the way I was thinking about it. They're 5 points off our growth in the playoffs.
Mhm.
That's not insurmountable.
Yeah.
You know, over the course of what's left, they can easily get 5 points. But there is also another 4 teams between those, you know, places as well. So you need to consider that. But you're right. There's 16 points as it stands behind St Johnstone.
Yeah.
Their next game is St Johnstone away, you know. So if they lose that game, they're 19 points behind the team that's top of the league.
Yeah.
That's they can't come back from that, Cam. Surely
Mhm.
they cannot come back from that. You know, if they lose that next week or this weekend, can they?
Based on the fact that they'd have to have St Johnstone collapse, no, they can't do that. Even if Ross County has fantastic form from now to the end of the season, they're going to not have better form, presumably, than St Johnstone. So even if Ross County, you know, going to tear for the rest of the season, I don't think there's a way that they can catch St Johnstone, unless St Johnstone decide they're going to only start fielding 9 players from the start of every game.
No, very true. And we're spoken here about County, but for Wraith Rovers, Cam,
Yeah.
how disappointed will Barry Robson and the side be coming away from that game? Or will they look at it and go, well, you know, Ross County do have the best team on paper, they've got the most money on paper, so it's a tough away game and, you know, we shouldn't really expect to win that.
Nah, they'll be fuming, especially looking at the stats. I didn't look too much at the game prior to this ahead of time, but Wraith Rovers had more of the possession, more shots on target. Ross County goalkeeper had 6 saves to Wraith Rovers 1 save. Wraith Rovers were all over them this game, it looks like. Without being at the game and being able to confirm that, it looks like Ross County struggled on and on and on and then managed to steal the game at the end with 2 goals. It's not what you want to look at in terms of how the team performed. You know, obviously, as we were saying there, you know, this might be the first step. It's not, you know, them turned a corner. I don't even know, looking at that this is a first step. That looks like a smash and grab. Not well deserved, and you know, probably a bit of a fluke. So I think Wraith Rovers will be looking at that thinking, how did we not at the very least get a point here? You know, we've been the better team, and we've thrown that one away, and it looks like it was a fairly straightforward event, but no, Wraith Rovers certainly made it hard for Ross County. So I suppose a wee bit more props to them in the fact that they managed to hold so strong against what is a really good Wraith Rovers team. So yeah, no, I give 3 points for Ross County, but I think this isn't the end of it for them. I think they're in for a tough season, if I'm honest, which is going to lead them to a really tough next season due to the amount of money they've spent this season. So, yeesh.
I think the thing for me about Wraith Rovers, you know, and I think Wraith Rovers are going to be definitely finishing in the playoffs at the end of the season.
I would have to.
For me,
this is certainly a good assumption.
but the issue I have with the form so far is the 3 teams that have beat them have been Ross County, Thistle, and St Johnstone, albeit all away from home. But you know, it's those types of games that if Wraith Rovers were serious about going and challenging for a title, they have to get a win out of at least one of them. You know, we've seen St Johnstone, we've seen Thistle go up to Ross County and win. You know, Wraith Rovers came away with nothing. So Wraith Rovers then came away with nothing, as I said, at St Johnstone, at Thistle. So it's one of those ones for me where I think if Wraith are serious about being really talked about, then they're the types of games they need to start picking up at least a point.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Obviously, in our league, every team plays each other 4 times, so they've not managed to do the business yet against the bigger teams, but there's still a long season to go, and they'll have plenty of times to redeem themselves. Certainly against that Ross County result, I think they'll be thinking that was a little bit of an unfair result, and I think they'll be looking to draw blood the next time they come to pass. However, there was another game this weekend where there was no blood drawn.
Oh God, it looked dire.
Yeah.
Have you seen the stats?
Yeah.
Oh God, we spoke about potentially a good 0-0 earlier on. This one was putting me to sleep just looking at the stats. Yeah. I'm also questioning how there can be 3 shots on target but no saves by the goalkeeper. That can't actually be a mistake, obviously. But like,
unless it's like goal line clearances by like a defender or whatever, close enough for it to register as a shot on target, but not a block at the edge of the box.
Very strange, though.
Yeah, that is an odd one. You're right in noticing that. I was looking at, because the lines for the goalkeeper saves are half along. I didn't even pick up that it was 0 saves. I just thought they both got an equal amount, which obviously they did. Yeah. But I just thought the bar would be nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, you would assume nothing, which makes me think that there's some kind of mistake in there. But anyway, it looked pretty dire. It looked pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
If you're an Ayr United fan, though, you come away massive positive from that.
Yeah, I think it's so.
I think it's now the 9th of August, Cam, was the last time that Ayr United were beat in the league. Really impressive stuff. We've been very critical of Scott Brown and his team so far this season, but I think this is where we need to actually give them a wee bit of credit, because they've been unbeaten for a while. They look as if they're starting to pick up a wee bit of form now, and they look as if they're starting to be a team that wants to get up there in the playoff, wants to show that they can get involved, and if they keep staying unbeaten, a few more wins, getting draws like they have done there against the team that's top of the league, then they're only going to do that.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, again, going back to sort of some of my comments to do with the Queen's Park and Dunfermline game, Ayr have gone there. A tough game on the face of it. But like you were talking about with Raise the Rovers, a game that they know going into, that the best situation for them if they want to do anything with this season is not lose. And they've managed that. They've not been able to go there and get 3 points, but no one's taken 3 points off of St Johnstone yet. So I think the best you can realistically go into that game away to St Johnstone hoping for is to come away from a point. Yes, maybe the fans on both sides probably not thinking that the gate money was worth it for them. Especially the Ayr fans coming to travelling to St Johnstone to watch that dull affair. Not great for them, but like you say, come the referee's whistle at the end of the game, I think the Ayr United players and fans will think, yeah, we'll take that. That's a nice point away from home against a tough team, and we'll probably need all the points we can get come the end of the season. So yeah, it's a nice result for them. St Johnstone probably kicking themselves a wee bit. I think they probably would have been hoping to have created a bit more throughout the game. Asked a few more questions of Ayr United, but whatever Scott Brown has done in terms of setting up his team, he's managed to, force the point on each side that there's no goalkeeper saves. So I think every goalkeeper goes in after a game where they've not had to do anything and they think, you know what, yeah, fair play. I was a bit bored, but it's better than potentially being the one at fault for a defeat. So yeah, 0-0. Who knows if it was a fair result? Based on the stats, it looks like it's probably a fair result. And I think the two of them will just be looking forward to the game coming up this weekend to, maybe push on from that and score a few more goals.
Yeah, completely agree, Cam, everything you said there, and I think based on the little quality there is in that game, we'll probably just move on. And this is Cam, I'm going to take a wee minute to say, listeners, if you're enjoying what you're listening to / watching, then please do give us a subscribe. If you're on YouTube, give us a follow. If you're on Spotify, and Cam, I'm sure this is an important point to let the listeners know that if they hit the like button on this video, it gives their team an extra 50% chance of winning at the weekend.
At least. Legally, we have to say 50%, but it could be anywhere up to 99.9%.
Absolutely. So if you do not win this weekend, it's because you've not hit that like button. So if you don't want to have that on your shoulders and on your mind, smash that like button just now, and you will have a chance of your team winning this weekend. And talking about this weekend, Cam, you're first up. You've got a trip up to Arbroath. You looking forward to it?
Definitely. Love a trip away to Arbroath. Yeah, very much looking forward to it. We were very upset that we lost them the year that they dropped down. So yes, very pleased to have Arbroath here. A nice away day down by the beach, and I don't want to see. I'm fairly superstitious in terms of talking ahead of time about things. Or say you're at half time in a game of you're watching and you're up 2 or 3 goals. You go, oh, what a great first half performance. This is going to be great. We just need to come out, maybe put a few more goals away, walk away 3 points, done all day, and then you come out and you lose the game and you just go, why did we even talk about it at half time? I want to say something along the lines of, we usually have decent days out in Arbroath, so maybe I'll leave it as close as that. Throughout the years, I suppose there's been a lot of fun days through in Arbroath, so it's a place that has great memories, whether you manage to get the points there or not. So yeah, I'm just hoping that it's a nice day, as nice as it gets in mid-October in Scotland. Just means not raining, and yeah, hopefully we see a good game of football, and that should hopefully do me. If we can get the 3 points, ideal, brilliant. But Arbroath away are always a bit of a weird one to try and predict or think about what's going to happen. So I'll leave it to Saturday to really get a gauge for it. Maybe it depends on what sort of football team we can put out, whether we have a defence or not, and then we can take it from there. But yeah, looking forward to the day out immensely.
Banking on the wind not being too high, obviously, so that'll be always an interesting one, and it's always a good day out up at Arbroath. So yeah, fingers crossed to you, Cameron Boy, and we'll see how you get on come next week. And obviously next, my side, Thistle going down to Morton, tough game. It's always a battle. We are still complimentary, Cam, of Morton, especially at the Capello.
Yep.
I'm expecting a tough game as always. I think it'll actually be fairly similar to how the game against Arbroath probably panned out, where you might have a good half, you might have a bad half, but ultimately if you don't win the battle at Morton, you're not going to come away with anything. So it's never going to be overly pretty down in Greenock. But if Thistle can come away with 3 points, and that is a big if, it'll be incredibly valuable to a charge on St Johnstone. What's your sort of perspective on Thistle, Cam, from going into this one?
I think the fact that Morton have just managed to get their first win of the season, I think it maybe puts you a little bit on the back foot there. Like you mentioned, it's always tough going to the Capello. It's they're always going to put up a fight there, and coming off the back of a big first victory of the league season, I think it'll have buoyed them just that little bit. They know that they can do it, and they're going to want to prove that again, back to back, show that they have finally found what the bit was that needed to click. So yeah, I think it's probably not the best time to come up against Morton, but at the same time, is there really a best time to come up against Morton at the Capello?
That's a very, very, very good point. I've seen a good few 0-0s with Thistle and Morton there. I've seen Thistle wins, I've seen Thistle defeats. So it is one of those kind of places where you just never know what you're going to get, apart from being open to the elements, of course, in the wee Dublin end. Absolutely.
Well, you guys, we don't, obviously, we're too small a support to be papped in the unsheltered bit, but yeah, unfortunately, I do always forget that you guys get papped into that bit. Very
unpleasant. So yeah, if you've got any good stories of Morton away and the wee Dublin end, then please do let us know in the comments. But moving on to massive games, I feel as though that keeps happening, where we work our way through the games, and the biggest ones are right down at the end. Now, Raith Rovers, firstly, at home against Ayr United. Are you expecting Raith to bounce back in this, or can Ayr United expect to see their unbeaten form going, considering the only team to have beaten Ayr this season is Raith Rovers?
Yeah, I think Ayr maybe got to be a little bit worried. Yes, they got a good point away at St Johnstone, but as we sort of talked about, it didn't really look like they managed to create very much. Obviously St Johnstone neither, but Ayr United, who's we're concentrating on, whereas it looked like with our very brief and limited scope analysis that Wraith Rovers were actually the better of the two teams away to Ross County. So I think if you look at it on the bare facts of the games they just played, you've got to say Wraith Rovers are in the better position, not to mention they are the home team as well. I think they'll be annoyed at themselves and they'll be wanting to set things right. And Ayr United are just still in this sort of weird space where they know they should be good, but they're not managing to pull it together yet. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a tough game for Ayr United. I think it's going to be a tough game for Wraith Rovers, but I think Wraith Rovers probably have enough to see them out for that game. They do have a good team.
So I was going to ask you this. On paper, who has a better team for you? Wraith Rovers or Ayr United?
That's a good
On
question.
paper.
That's a good question. On paper, I'd say Ayr United have a better team.
So would that.
I would
So
say
would
so.
that.
They obviously have the best goalkeeper in the league. You know, your favourite goalkeeper. So, yeah, I mean, if they, the issue is that they have loads of really good players to the point where I think there's probably like 14 or 15 players who probably think they should be starting every game. I know Dom Thomas is one of those players. Dom Thomas generally expects that he starts every game, and you know, for Dunfermline in Queen's Park that was the case. He played every week. Then he goes over to Ireland, spits the dummy out, and moves back home because he wasn't getting played, and he's playing less at Ayr United than he was at Derry. So yeah, I think he'll be certainly one of the good couple of players that's probably knocking on Scott Brown's door and asking why he's not playing. So I think as the season goes on, they'll maybe start to get a bit of a problem with that. A lot of players who aren't getting as much game time as they were either promised or expecting. So yeah, on paper, better team, but due to that, I think they're going to have way more problems with it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a really, really, really good point, and I actually just agree with what you said there, Cam. So yeah, really, really interesting. And then on to our final game, Cam. We've kind of spoken a wee bit about this earlier on in the episode, but St Johnstone against County, massive game for Ross County here.
It's huge.
It is one of those ones where, as we said, they lose, they go 19 points behind St Johnstone after just 10 games played. You know, that's insurmountable, Cam, isn't it? You know, so it is massive here for County. Do you give them much of a chance picking up the win?
No. No, I don't. Don't get me wrong, obviously St Johnstone just played poorly. But based on what we've seen so far, they are by far the superior team out of the two in terms of result and how they're playing. Again, you probably look at those two teams on paper and you'd say Ross County is the better team in this one as well. But the way St Johnstone are playing and the way the manager has them playing together is obviously what's given them the benefit at the moment. So unless they've worked something out at Ross County, or they've seen something that no one else in the division has seen so far in the way St Johnstone play, I think we're probably looking quite safely at a St Johnstone victory in that one.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's going to be a really interesting one for me. I think it depends how much of a boost in Cam and how much of a lift Ross County are going to get off that win, and how much of a belief they've got in themselves to go to a place like St Johnstone and get a result. That's going to be the key. It's going to be really interesting to see where Ross County are at as a team just now.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see how much influence Tony Dock can have over them going into a big game. So obviously, game of the weekend, and it's going to be really, really intriguing to see who comes out on top.
Yes, no, I'm in full agreement. And then obviously we're missing a game. Airdrie against Dunfermline is postponed until the same night as the Partick Thistle Ayr United game, the 21st of October. That's because Dunfermline are using the old Partick Thistle get out your game strategy, and they've got players on international duty, so their game has been postponed once more. So a nice wee midweek game for Airdrie against Dunfermline. So we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. Obviously, we'll be discussing another Tuesday night game that week anyway. So I think it only leaves us with one bit to go.
Everybody's favourite part, prediction time, Cam. How did we get on in the last week?
This week it's not my favourite part. I'm
No,
just
am I pulling
gonna,
away from you?
yeah. I'm just gonna say, just straight up from the off, I got 0 points this week.
0? Shit.
0 points.
It's not often I swear in this podcast. 0? I didn't realise that.
And then it just makes it easier just to go with what you got. And you correctly said there was going to be a draw in 4 games. No, sorry, you predicted there would be 4 draws. You got 2 of those draws accurately, just not with the right score line. So Queen's Park drew with Dunfermline. You had that for a 2-2, and you also had 2-2 for the St Johnstone Ayr game, which was again 0-0. So 4 points total for you, 0 for me. I think I got a 0 last year at one point as well, so that's fun. So a 9-point gap at the moment.
Oh, I'm pulling away here, Cam. Pulling away.
So it's you to go first this week. We'll try and keep a memory point on this. You have all the even weeks, and I start all the odd weeks.
Okay.
So
I'm never going to remember what's an odd and an even week.
So it's you.
Oh, right, of the podcast. Right,
Yes.
okay, I get you now. I was thought you mean, as in like this is week 40 of the year.
No, technically it's not technically week 40 of the podcast because we don't do predictions every week, but it is game week 10.
We don't. Yes, game week 10. So yeah, that makes sense. So yes, anyway, me to kick off. I'm going to go for a draw in this game. I think the draw done me quite well last week.
Yeah.
Hint, there might be a theme again this week. So I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to say 1 each.
1 each. I was sort of initially thinking maybe a 1 each sort of draw, and then I went, you know what, Arbroath are probably going to beat us. So what I eventually ended up settling on was 2-1 Queen's Park.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice. That's a great flip.
Flip-flopped all over the place with it. Initially, I was like, yeah, it's going to be a draw all day. And then I was just like, nah, they're going to be too tough. I think they're going to beat us. And just it came to me there, 2-1 Queen's Park. So I've thrown the cat out of the whatever the saying is there. And next one up, we've got Morton against your lot, Partick Thistle. What's your thoughts?
So originally I was going to go for a draw.
Yeah.
But I'm changed my mind. And I'm going to back the team.
Hey!
And I'm going to go for a Thistle win. I just hope that the draw against Arbroath was enough pain for them to realise that there has to be winning in this team. And they're going to fight and they're going to do it, and a wee bit of quality will show. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Thistle.
Nice. I'm going to go for that draw in this one. I was going to go 0-0, but I'm going to go 1 each because I think there's at the very least a goal or two in the game. So yeah, 1 each for me on that one.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking in the first place, so I can't argue at all with that one. And I'm going to go back to the draws, Cam, here.
Right.
Wraith Rovers against Ayr United. We agree that we think Ayr United do have the slightly better team on paper, but I think with home advantage, Wraith Rovers, I was edging for a Wraith Rovers win.
Yeah.
But just something about me saying it's going to be 2-2.
2-2. I was already hovering over the 2. I had an idea about that. I am backing Wraith Rovers. I am going to back them for a 3-1 victory.
Oh, 3-1. That's quite a statement one.
Yeah,
for
they're
Wraith
going to
Rovers
pump
to come
them.
up.
They're going to pump them, and that's that.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to stick here with the theme of draws going into the last game. And what I would say is it's going to be a better point for St Johnstone than it will be Ross County. I almost think for St Johnstone going into this game, they kind of just need to not lose in this game almost, and it's a win for them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go for a 1 each draw.
I'm not. I'm going for a home victory in that one as well. I'm going to go 2-0.
2-0. Comfortable for St Johnstone there.
So that's us. We're obviously not going to do the prediction for the Airdrie Dunfermline game just now. We'll get that next week, presumably. Yep. No, following week maybe. So we'll go over the 4 results that we've got for this week coming up. Arbroath against Queen's Park. I've backed Queen's Park to get an away victory 2-1. You've went for a 1-0 draw. We've went the inverse of our predictions in this one, Morton against Thistle, where I've went for the 1-1 draw and you've went for the 2-1 away victory for your own team, Partick Thistle. Wraith Rovers against Ayr United, I've went for a 3-1 Wraith victory. You've went for a 2-2 draw, not realising that Wraith Rovers have a good team. And St Johnstone against Ross County, I've went for a 2-0 St Johnstone victory, and you went for a 1-1 draw in that one. So
if we're ever to do merch, Cam, if we're ever to do merch, I'm making a mug that says Wraith Rovers have a good team.
Yeah, they do. They do. No one
That's all
will
Wraith Rovers
disagree.
fan.
No one will disagree.
Well,
We'll all say
We'll have in their Christmas stockings.
that's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. So that's the predictions done for this week, and therefore the podcast as well. Another one bites the dust, as they say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you all very much for joining us again, and thank you, Jack Curry, for joining me again for another week of the Referees a Podcast. We'll be back presumably the same time next week. No guarantees on that though. We'll be back at some point, and hopefully you enjoy it when we do. So see you all later.
Absolutely. Have a great one, listeners, and we'll see you again soon. For now.